You may think that I goofed when I said 10 million atoms per cubic centimeter, when if you look at Wikipedia or wherever, you'll see numbers like zero point 0.5 atoms per cubic centimeter, zero point 0.3 atoms per cubic centimeter. You'll see experts giving talks as though they were authorities on the subject, quoting zero point 0.3 centimeter, zero point 0.3 atoms per centimeter, that space is a vacuum. All of these numbers can be found uh, from various sources. The bottom line is this is cutting edge, and the science is not settled. Case in point, I suspect the eggheads who work for NASA or work for the quasi governmental organizations, not NGOs, work for these NGOs masquerading as NASA employees, borrowing the prestige of NASA so that no one will question them. I suspect these eggheads and these propagandists have never used a vacuum cleaner, because if they were to push the nozzle of a vacuum cleaner across the floor, across dirt and sand and lint on the floor, what would happen? What would be observed? You would see in front of the nozzle an onrush of dirt and lint into the nozzle of the vacuum cleaner, leaving behind a void. And you know, if you were to put this vacuum cleaner under controlled conditions in a cloud of smoke, for example, suppose you were able to make some thick smoke in a room that was not in motion, and you had your camera placed just right. You observe the smoke being sucked into the nozzle of the vacuum cleaner. I imagine you would see a vortex. You would see this smoke streaming into the nozzle of the vacuum cleaner, spinning in the same way as a tornado spins, in the same way as a hurricane spins, the same way as the galaxy spins, the same way that water going down the sink or the commode spins. I don't know why it spins, I just know that it does. So what you probably have in actuality is not a bubble caused by the solar wind or a bubble caused by the sun's electromagnetic field. No, you have a bubble, just like the vacuum cleaner sucking up dirt. You have a void, and you have an area in front of the nozzle of compressed dirt, condensed dirt, and behind that a void. If the dirt were under pressure or magnetized, attracted to itself in some way as the interstellar hydrogen is, it would fill in behind this path of the vacuum cleaner, and you would observe a bubble traveling across the floor, a void traveling across the floor, with the nozzle of the vacuum cleaner taking the place of the sun with its huge gravitational force, the most massive object in the solar system. The sun is 99% of the mass of the solar system. What you would expect if the sun or any star was rushing headlong into a cloud of thick dust would be a funnel shape, spinning, entering the nozzle of the vacuum cleaner, or the surface or the core of the star, leaving in its wake a void, an empty space that was shrinking and filling in behind it as it moved forward. The sun is moving through a cloud of interstellar gas. NASA says 52,000 miles per hour. I suspect it's more like 60, 68, because of a theory I have about us orbiting Alpha Centauri, and based on the retreat and the growth of the ice caps on our poles, I've kind of done some sloppy math and come up with the idea that we're moving at 68,000. We're orbiting Alpha Centauri, and the radius of the orbit is so much, and our speed must be so much. All guesswork, all an approximation, just a ballpark figure. And maybe it is 52,000 and not 68,000, as I said earlier. Everything that you will read or see or hear about the heliosphere is up for grabs. It's all unsettled. It's like a breaking news story. And you got to wait and see what the experts say 5 and 10 years down the line, or 20 years down the line, if the experts ever get it straight. I'd like to say this about climate change. When the leftists got in Congress in the aftermath of their Vietnam War protest, one of the things they did was find ways to divert public money toward their various radical causes, environmental causes, so that when oil companies drill in certain places like offshore, they have to pay a big chunk of money. Oh, it's not tax money. They have to pay a big chunk of money for the privilege of drilling. And this money goes, oftentimes, it's supposed to go to the environmentalists, but the corrupt politicians don't give it to the environmentalists all the time. But when you see whack jobs sincerely protesting the XL pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline, for example, what brought them out? What mobilized them? Who is the organizational force behind them? And why are they protesting this dirty oil? They're saying this is dirty oil. We don't want dirty oil. Here's how these whack jobs were recruited. These sincere whack jobs, just like me and you. Somebody approached them and says, do you like blue skies and green trees and mountain streams and fish and bear and deer? Do you like nature? Do you like to hike? Do you like to visit the national forest? And they say, yeah. Well, why don't you sign our petition? Why don't you join our little group? Why don't you give us your address or email so that we can send you our newsletter? And for free, you can join Friends of the Wabash River. And they say, well, okay, might as well. So now the Friends of the Wabash River and about 100 or 1,000 other groups, similar groups, are all sent a newsletter put out by such an outfit as the Land and Water Conservation Fund, who gets their money from extortion of the oil companies. The oil companies pay this extortion for the privilege of drilling, so that these whack jobs can mobilize protesters to try to prevent them from drilling or refining or building a pipeline, all in the name of stopping global warming. Unproved, totally unproved, a premise that's never been examined by these people. That's what funds the environmental movement. And another thing I suspect funding the environmental movement would be Obama's carbon credits, carbon exchange, carbon tax. You have to pay for the privilege of emitting carbon dioxide without having examined the science behind it. And there ain't none. This is all a setup. This is a conspiracy. You know, people do conspire. Not everybody who suspects that somebody's out to get them is crazy, and you're not always wrong if you think that somebody is conspiring against you. The United States seems to have enemies. These enemies seem to be instigated, provoked. Who would instigate and provoke enemies against the United States except for a communist conspiracy an international socialist movement. Maybe they don't call themselves communists. Maybe they call themselves democratic socialists. Carol Browner was head of the EPA. She was a member of the Socialist International. There's a lot of connections between the socialists, the people who campaigned for George McGovern, with namely Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, who also studied Alinsky, the radical agitator from Chicago. That all goes hand in hand with Obama and his crowd, the SDS, Bill Ayers, the Weather Underground bomber. The more you look, the less credit these people have, the less trustworthy these people are. Their argument stands on a flimsy premise, but they are well organized and well funded. They know what they're doing. And their slogan is, a well organized minority can outdo a disorganized majority anytime.